alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a new guest to the show, JP McLean. Welcome to the show. I almost said welcome to the guest. Welcome to the show, JP.
Thank you, Tim. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. So you were just telling me that you write fantasy with a thrillery edge, urban fantasy type stuff with a thriller edge.
Yes, I do. The Gift Legacy series is 6 books, and the fantasy element is that they're a secret society of people who can fly. And the thriller element is that somebody's picking them off one by one, and they have to find out who.
They can fly? Oh, that's a cool... Is that like their only power? Because I think that's actually a really cool idea. Yeah, I suppose...
It starts off that way.
Okay.
And then they different powers emerge as you get to meet the different characters. Each of them has a little special extra something.
That's still really cool. I love the idea of, like, honestly, flight is one of those things like, wow, you could do so much with that. It would change the world completely. That's why, like, in my my one sci-fi, well, kind of space opera weird setting, the Pillar universe, like, everyone can basically fly in certain conditions in that setting. Because they have these, but it's technological in this case. But it's like it just changes how you think of all the space in a scene. You know, if you think about it, at least it did for me anyway. Verticality and all that.
One of the fun scenes that I wrote a couple of scenes. Is this group has to learn how to train to fight together to protect one another, and so I thought, well, the perfect location to do that would be in paintball and then later in laser tag. And so I've got a 3-dimensional paintball game where they're up in the rafters and they're outside and they're using full height to set their games. And that was tons of fun to write.
Yeah, like it's like Ender's Game, you know, like Battle School, if you read that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. You're right.
Yeah.
That would have been fun. I would have loved to have been in that dome and floating around in there.
Yeah, just a kid in a can shooting lasers at each other. Yeah, that was such a. Yeah. That's the funny thing about that book. Is it actually is just a tangent about Ender's Game because it was my favorite novel for a while there when I was a teenager. Yeah. But it was like, you know, it kind of is. It's got that wish fulfillment element of like you get to go to a cool school in space. Shoot lasers at each other and play games and stuff. But then, like, and then it's awful. And all this horrible dark stuff is in it, too. And I love that. That's a great combination to me. Anyway, tangent over. So, what's the name of your series, by the way? The series with the flying people.
It's called The Gift Legacy is the name of the series. And the first book is called Secret Sky.
Cool. We did touch on one other thing in our little pre-show chat, and I wanted to bring it up again. It's just dictation because I've mentioned this a bunch lately. So take a drink if you're doing the drinking game, I guess, for this, but don't if you're driving or anything. But I stopped dictating recently, but its speed of writing is very interesting, and I don't know. Getting word counts up, that's kind of that's been a challenge for me since I quit dictating because like it's so much more work to type, but it makes much better books for me anyway. I know some people like Paul Sading, who's been a guest on this show, swears by dictation, and some people it's just too difficult to do it, and I'm just one of those people who just word vomits when I dictate, and it's just such a pain to clean it up, and I'm so bad at it, honestly, so slow. It's just painstaking labor at that point. Whereas normally editing is very fun for me if I type it.
Yeah. Not that cleanup kind of work though. That's not fun. I know what you mean. I've tried it. I go on walks and dictate into my phone and I can't seem to get a perfect sentence out no matter how hard I try. And I realize that when I'm typing, I don't type. I'll type a sentence and then I'll have to think about it. I might type another sentence. I'm not a fast writer. I probably only do, 1,000 or 2,000 words a day on a regular day. If I do 5,000 words, it's an exceptionally good day, and I'm in the middle of a really good writing streak. But as I had mentioned to you before, I had read that you shouldn't expect to learn how to dictate any quicker than you learned how to type. And that really holds true, I think, if you're going to be dictating, and you would know because you've done it for a while, is that it's a skill you have to learn.
Yes, absolutely. And there's also all the software to master and all this. All the tools are different than writing, and that's than typing. And that's a big challenge, actually.
What did you use?
Oh, I used Dragon, and I used a voice recorder, the Sony voice recorder, I believe. That is, I still use it to record podcasts sometimes when I'm out walking, because sometimes I do solo show episodes of this show, which is fun. But I hope people don't mind those, because I'm sure the sound quality is not the same. Even though this room is a little
it's not too bad. I listened to the one that you did a couple of days ago, where you were just walking outside and you could hear you crunching. Of your feet. I thought it was nice because you're outside and you're just speaking your thoughts, and I really was super impressed that you did 7,000 words. That would be my very best day.
Oh, so that was the most recent one. Yeah, 7,000 words is like, I mean, my best day is like 15,000, but
wow.
But my best typing day ever was like 13. But I dictated once for 3 or 4 hours in one day, and I got 15 grand. It's about the best I can do, though. I mean, honestly, by the time I was done with that, and this is where the productivity problems come in, is after 1 hour of dictation, my mind is fragged. It's ruined. Because it's so much words. It's like 2 or 3 chapters of a book of mine. One of my books. Like, I could get 3 chapters done in an hour, 6,000 words being like my kind of normal amount that I'd get done. But it's just so painful.
I would do a scene.
Yeah, scene. Yeah,
I would do a scene. That's just typing, and that wouldn't be necessarily very much. Maybe 500 words, maybe 1,000. And then if I can do the bridge to the next scene, I will. But sometimes that's all I can do in a day, and I figure I'm done. Once I've done that, I'm good to go. I can wait till the next day.
That's a really healthy way to look at it, because honestly, my work ethic is not healthy. It's not good for me. Which, at least when I was dictating, I could be pacing around the house or walking outside, and that the result would be better as far as my health, my physical health. But mentally, it was even worse, because it meant I'm not going to just go and relax and listen to music while I walk outside or whatever. That's my main form of exercise, is walking around town. Yeah. And I live in a little town, and it's freezing cold lately. Anyway, it's like I'm shivering inside this room right now. But
oh, dear.
Yeah, it's little challenges of living in the middle of the Dust Bowl, basically.
I think the whole balance issue for writers it's a big deal.
Yeah.
I've gone through stages myself where you just sit so much during the day and you're so excited to be writing that you just don't want to get up and do something else. I mean, even making dinner, you just put a can of beans on or something because you just in the middle of something and you don't want to let it go. And that's so unhealthy.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the day I did 12,000 words, I was 19, so I balanced right out of it. And I was not a very healthy 19-year-old, but I was still like, now that I think about it, I'm like, wow, that was easy because I was a kid. But I sat down on a Saturday. I was a freshman in college. I think people have probably heard me tell this story before, but I'll tell it again. I was a freshman in college, and I was in my second semester of college, actually. So it was spring, and I just decided, like, I'm gonna get the food. I'm gonna get a sandwich wrapped up and just store it in my fridge in my dorm room, and then I'll just sit in my chair all day and write. It didn't work out that way. But I was still writing for 10 hours that day, and it's insane. I would get up at 5 a.m. I think I actually got up at 4 that day, and so by the time I was done, I was, people were like the kids at the high school nearby were getting out of school, and I was like, well, I'm done. And I had 13,000 words. It was, but the fact is, I'd been sitting all day, except for one time I got up to get more food. Like, that was it.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard on your body. Really hard on your back. Hard on your shoulders. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. At least I was sitting in an easy chair. That was the funny thing. I was sitting in basically what amounts to a rocking chair the whole day.
Well, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah, preview of being a senior citizen, maybe. Hopefully. I mean, I should be so lucky by then. Anyway.
Yeah.
So JP, you have this kind of, you have a fairly long series here, right? I saw that. Admittedly, most of my research was looking at your Twitter profile, but that's more than I usually do anyway. So I'm fairly proud of myself, in a mild way, anyway.
I was just in Twitter. I was in Twitter because I just got a new review on Secret Sky, and it was so impressive. I went in and thanked the guy. I'm going to print out that review.
Yeah, I saw you retweeted it, too. You retweeted it. The reviews are great when they're good. I mean, I love some of my good reviews.
Yeah.
But
that one was spectacular. Mm.
Yeah, I got one from...
Anyway, yes.
Sorry, go on.
In the series, and each of the books is about... Well, the first one's 120,000, and the other ones are slightly smaller. Mm-hmm. So I guess you could consider it epic if you considered them all together. Like you're probably doing 600,000 for one book.
No, 600,000. Yikes.
And then the Lover Betrayed book is actually the first book written from a different character's perspective.
Which book number is that? Which one? What number in the series?
It doesn't have a number. It's called the companion book. It's Lover Betrayed. So it's the protagonist's lover in the first book. It's his perspective because he's a controversial figure at the end of the first book. So you kind of wonder, well, what was his motivation? So that book is his motivation.
Interesting. Yeah, it's funny because. And I know this, and this is something that might actually surprise people because one of my favorite TV shows of late, the last few years, has been The Blacklist. You familiar with this one?
Oh,
it's.
I have never seen it, but I do know what one you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the characters on there is this kind of he's like the fake husband character. So he's kind of a similar boat. He's one of my favorite characters. Is this guy who's like. He's like because it's like a spy espionage kind of show, really. He was hired to basically to watch the main character, and they ended up getting married. And this was all before the show actually started. She doesn't know that he was a spy, basically, the whole time.
Oh.
And that's not a huge spoiler. That comes out like really fast in the show. But then he's just this like desperate, kind of brutal character sometimes, and he's a really fun character to have around, even though he's not really a nice guy. But
that's on Netflix, right?
That's on Netflix. Yeah,
I should watch that.
Yeah, you should. It's got a little bit of science fiction in it sometimes, but mostly it's just modern thriller stuff.
Okay.
And spy stuff. Yeah,
I'll add it to my giant Netflix list.
Yes. Netflix and Hulu now. Hulu's got a really good selection too. I'm sorry. Now I'm not here to endorse any companies, but I enjoy both of those actually lately.
Yeah. Well.
And I like my TV. That's the thing, especially when I can watch it on demand. I don't think I could watch commercials anymore. That's not my thing. It's not my style.
Yeah, even the news now. If I watch a newscast, I usually put it on pause for 20 minutes before I start watching it, so that I can skip through all the commercials.
Wait. We'll watch this without the commercial. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah. So it's funny because as much as writing can be, I mean, reading's important to writing, but I find any kind of story consumption is very valuable. Because it gets me thinking about like different ways of doing stuff, in a book. Because I pretty much only write books, but I don't know. I don't know if there's a question in there. I'm just mumbling, I guess, at this point.
Do you ever write short stories?
I have written a few, but I'm not a big short story writer. No.
I find them really difficult to write. I've written a few. I give them away for people who want to sign up for my mailing list, but I do find them a real challenge to write. I find the long form much easier.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I like kind of mid-length, like the old pulp style novels. 50,000 words at least is usually kind of my speed. But I have a few novellas out. I have a few novellas. It's really when you get shorter than 20,000 words that it becomes kind of challenging for me to wrap it up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've gotten better at that over the years. Yeah, go on.
I just finished Name of the Wind by
Ooh.
Patrick Rothfuss. Oh my gosh, I like that. That's a really good book.
I've heard that. I actually am not. It was around here somewhere at one point, but I've lost track of it. I read maybe a third of it at one point, and I must say, his prose was really good. It's not that I didn't like it. I have huge problems with consistency in reading. And though I admit I was a little bored by the fact that he was going to go to a wizard school. Like, okay, I don't need that in my life. Not now. I've read all 7 Harry Potter books. Okay. I know it's going to be a different take, but it's like, okay, not my favorite thing.
Yeah. I'm not interested enough to read the second book only because, as I understand it, he hasn't finished writing the series yet.
No, he hasn't.
I don't
it's been like 20 years
into it.
Yeah, because back when I was in high school, I mean, The Name of the Wind was just blowing up. It was new, and he still hasn't finished the series. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. But you look on it on Amazon, it's got something like 25,000 reviews.
No, it was a huge breakout. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Rothfuss made I honestly think, and I don't want to criticize Rothfuss, but I think he may have been in one of the more challenging positions you can be in as an author. Like, his first book is one of the biggest fantasy novels of the century so far. That's crazy.
Wow.
And then the pressure's on for book 2. You better believe it. That's why I think the main reason book 2 is considered more of a mixed bag is because it's actually kind of more of a normal sophomore book for an author. And it was also the first book he ever wrote. He had never written another novel before. That first
one.
I
didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's pretty impressive. Another one that actually I just recently found out, but one of my favorite authors, Joe Abercrombie, his first book that he released was the first book he ever wrote, The Blade Itself. And that is almost incredible to me because that book is pretty excellent and just a fun story. I mean, like, it's surprising sometimes. Also, it's huge, fantasy, kind of similar to The Name of the Wind in size. It surprises me.
What was the name of it?
Oh, The Blade Itself. It's dark fantasy. And it's the first book in the First Law trilogy, which is really cool. Very, very. It's like I mean, Joe Abercrombie's Twitter handle is at Lord Grimdark, because he's kind of the guy. He's kind of the guy who set up that as what they call it. Which, I mean, I don't know if he decided to call it that himself, but he really embraced that subgenre.
Oh, I'll definitely read it. I cannot believe when I talk to people how many good suggestions I get for books. And you think you've read a lot, but there's so much out there to read.
You better believe it. Yeah. Hundreds of thousands of books being published every year. It's crazy. And even if most of those books aren't something you want to read, well, there's still a good chunk that are. Even if like 95% of them aren't, there's still 5,000 books that you might want to read coming out every year. And that's on a conservative note. Yeah. No way.
And the thing I like about the fantasy and even the epic fantasy, low fantasy, high fantasy, I like that you just don't know what to expect and anything is possible.
Yes, exactly. I mean, honestly, I don't want to spoil anything with the book I'm writing right now. I'm a Well Country, the third book in my Demon Hunter series, but that's high fantasy, epic fantasy. And yet there's some surprisingly genre mashup elements in there that aren't obvious necessarily, but they feel to me kind of obvious now. Like, I'm writing, I'm like, well, this is funny. It's like I meant to do this all along, because I'm not gonna say exactly what I mean, but there's like this element of there's this element of a sci-fi subgenre that suddenly presented itself in this book, and it made perfect sense, and it doesn't feel like it's part of a sci-fi book. It just feels like, oh, I get to do the things the sci-fi book was going to do anyway. The kind of sci-fi I was thinking about, And I know I'm being general and it's vague, but I'm not spoiling anything. The book isn't even written yet. I'm not going to spoil it.
What's fun too is we're seeing so much more genre mashup, and it's fascinating. It's really, really good. I mean, it's hard to find where you might fit it into a bookstore, but the online bookstores, you can easily find stuff that's a mashup of different genres.
Yeah, and though still getting that out to the biggest number of people is challenging, because I do write a lot of mashups. I mean, my Rain Protocol series is basically cyberpunk meets fantasy in a lot of ways.
Oh.
And I thought that'd be easy to do, but it wasn't. I thought easy to... But I actually think the other problem with that series is it's written in such a bizarre kind of format. It's got multiple third-person point of views, but also the main character is first person. So it's confusing to people, I think. And that's why I don't see a lot of read through. Yeah, I mean, and the reason I did that is because the whole premise of the book is that people can share their memories. So all the other memories that he gets, all the other points of view are memories the main character has, and he's kind of reviewing, presumably at the end of the story.
Is it past tense?
It's all past tense, yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of, it's not as intense as present tense is tough for me to write. I don't think I've ever written a book in present tense.
I just read Victoria Aveyard's Red Queen series, and that's written in present tense. And it took, probably a third of the book before I got used to it, because it's not something you read every day, but it's very immediate. Everything feels urgent in that tense.
Yeah, like Chuck Wendig tends to write present tense, I think, right?
I'll have to check Wanderers and find out.
I mean, like I read some of his earlier works, like the Blue Blazes, Blackbird, or what?
Yeah.
Blackbirds. I don't know. Yeah, those were both present tense.
Miriam Black.
Yeah, Miriam Black. I think those are. Yeah.
Are they? Okay. Well, I hadn't remembered that, so I'll have to go back and take a peek.
I don't know if I've ever read anything by him that wasn't in present tense. So but because he's kind of got this filmic kind of quality to it, like cinematic. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never written in present tense. Mine are all past tense, but the series is first person point of view. I have a new book out that I'm just shopping around right now to agents, and it's third person. And I found third person actually easier to write than the first person.
It's funny because I actually think I almost never write in first person, but the first person parts of the Rain Protocol series, that was actually some of the easiest writing I've ever done. It's kind of weird how it goes both ways. Like I think it's just the novelty makes it easier to write sometimes. Of like doing something you're not used to doing. You're just like, this makes sense. This is also a good way to do it.
Yeah. I remember when I first started writing the first person, I struggled with how many times I started a sentence with I. Mm-hmm. And it took me a while to get better at not doing that. I'd have to go back and revise and revise and revise.
Yeah. That's kind of like, and if you, especially though, fighting the urge to start with a character's name or the word I in first person is... Mm-hmm. actually really useful because it helps keeps you from filtering, right? Filtering being the kind of part where you say, I saw this, he felt that, which is obviously you don't need that stuff. You just describe the emotion or the feeling or the sight that they're seeing or whatever. Yeah.
That's bang on. You're absolutely right. And I think your writing improves when you stop doing that.
Yes.
You recognize it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Absolutely. This goes back to why I stopped dictating because it was like all the lessons I learned typing after 15 years of typing went out the window completely when I started dictating. I was like, I'm just going to get words down as fast as I can, and they were such garbage that it was such a pain to edit. It was like practically rewriting the book every time I went over a scene I dictated. Anyway, enough about that. I've complained enough about my poor decision making.
I also understood that you're a discovery writer. You're a pantster. Yeah.
I discover story as I go. Though, I mean, I do have I used to have a very loose outline. Actually, the more I think about it, I always kind of have an outline or a structure that I'm writing around. Mm-hmm. Origin of Storms is my longest novel. Is a travel log. Mm-hmm. So I had all these places that I wanted the characters to go at the beginning of the story. I didn't know what was going to happen at any of these places or what they were going to do there, but I knew who lived there. I knew what was around there, and I kind of had an inkling of what would go on. So I make notes, but in advance. But that was one of the most smooth writing experiences I had, even though I was writing it for a whole year. It's a big long book, not 600,000 words long though. It's like 170,000 words long, but still.
That's a long book. It's very long for me.
It's pretty long for me too. Like I said, my longest currently, and probably will be my longest for a while yet. It's too long, and I don't know. I just recently was thinking about, because I'm gonna try to write the sequel to it. I'm like, now what? Does the sequel need to be 120,000 or 150,000 words long? Well, it's not going to be. I'm sorry, folks. That's a little bit much. I think it's gonna be like 100K, which is a very reasonable length for a novel.
Yeah. I did the first book, Secret Sky. I wrote that totally by the seat of my pants.
Oh yeah.
And then rewrote it. And what I discovered writing a series like that is that the further into the series I got, the more outlining I had to do. I simply was not capable of keeping that much detail in my head. And I was writing myself into way too many dead ends because I wanted it to keep going. So I ended up becoming a very thorough outliner by the end of the series. And now I find, even for the little short stories that I'm trying to write, I do need more of a structure now than I did that first time. I don't know whether it's I don't trust that it's going to come out in the end or what, but it's changed.
Yeah, you know, I've heard a lot of people say, like, you know, how would I keep it in my head? And I'm like, I just remember most of this stuff because I have a memory that's really good for random nonsense, which includes the stuff of a fictional novel, right? Like almost everything that's happened, I can usually remember it, at least if I'm prompted, which I usually am. Like if I switch perspectives in the book, like, you know, like my big epic fantasies, I have 5 point of view characters in this book, but the moment I switch to one of them, I'm like, oh, this is where they were at, basically. And but it's not like I'm a John von Neumann. I'm not some sort of genius. I just have a little bit of autism, and it helps with this kind of thing. I'm serious.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, it's called Asperger Syndrome, or it was before they changed the designation.
Oh,
whatever.
I didn't know they changed it. What's it now?
It's just part of the autism spectrum disorder range now.
Oh, okay.
But when I was diagnosed, it was Asperger Syndrome. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of nice that you can take that and make it something useful for you.
Well,
nice.
But you better believe it wasn't easy to learn to write characters or any of that stuff. Like because I get to know people very slowly in real life. It takes forever for me to really get to feel like I know anybody. And the same is actually true of my characters, which is very rough when I'm going to have to discover the character as well, because I'm very bad at saying, like, this is who they are, and I learn who the character is as I write the story. And it took me several years of becoming progressively more well-adjusted to be able to work, you know, in character quickly in a story. So I must have written 5 or 6 novels before I felt like I had a handle on that kind of thing. And I still did, and actually I didn't even feel like it before I had a handle on it. Let me put it that way. I still was very nervous about my characterization for a long time.
So how many books do you have out?
I have like 9 or 10 out. I forget. But I forget exactly how many. I guess because I've written like 25. Yeah. So. And
how long does it take you to write a book?
Depends. Like I said, Origin of Storms took almost exactly a year to write the rough draft, and it didn't get. And also, a lot of my books, I didn't release them for years after writing them because I was trying to get traditionally published. And then I switched over to independent publishing. So now I'm trying to publish a book, you know, every month or every other month. I'm not very good at it.
Wow.
But I'm trying.
Wow. It takes me a year. Each book is a year. By the time it's edited and proofed, it's a year.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fine length, though. I mean, I find a reasonable amount of time for a good long book, especially if you have other things going on in your life. I'm pretty much, that's what I do. And I'm podcasting now. I'm podcasting twice a week. It does feel like a real job to some degree. But a real job that only takes half an hour at a time to actually do. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I do laugh at my own joke, but never mind. So we have talked about writing. We talked about reading. JP, it's been great having you on the podcast.
Well, thank you. It's been lovely talking to you. I really enjoyed myself.
Well, I'm glad you did. Tell the listeners a little bit about your books. Oh, not a little bit about your books. Where can they find your books? We already talked a little bit about your books.
The books
Yeah.
are everywhere. They're on wherever you find books. And if you go to my website, jpmcleanauthor.com, there's a bookstore page, and all the links are there for, whether you're on Kobo or Amazon or the Nook. And they're also available in paper. So that's where they can find me.
Wonderful. Sweet. It's it's been great talking to you, and I can't say enough thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And as for this podcast, you can find more of us at mentalcellarpublications.com. You can find my books on amazon.com in ebook format, or you can find them, wherever you can get print-on-demand books, or at least for the larger titles. Some of the smaller ones, are ebook only at this point, but we'll be working on that in the near future. Thanks for listening, folks. Stay safe out there, and have a good week.